Okay, welcome to the Algebra Tiles Introduction Unit. We're going to try on this short video to explain each of the algebra pieces that we use when we use the algebra tiles. Here's a map that has all of our algebra tiles on it that we use. We have a unit, an x squared, a 5 unit, a y squared, and an xy. We're going to go through each of these and talk about their properties and some things about them. Okay. The first one we're going to look at is the unit. Okay, the unit is usually dark blue on one side and red on the other. And we want to look at each piece and its dimensions. Okay, so on this piece, since we don't really know what the measurement is, we're going to go ahead and just let this unit or this measurement be 1. The distance, it is a square, so all the sides are 1. And so when we go through and we label the length times the width, it's going to be a 1 by 1. Another way to write it is like this. Its name is 1, or the unit. And when we find the perimeter, we're going to add up all of the outside edges. So we're going to add up 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1. And that gives us a total of 4. So that's the perimeter. Okay. The next piece is a 5. It's basically 5 unit pieces put together. Its dimensions, it is 1 tall, but it is 5 wide. So we call it a 1 by 5. Sometimes we'll just call it a 5 or 5 units. Its perimeter is 1 plus 5 plus 1 plus 5, which is 12. Now be careful. Some students will take the 5 piece and they'll break it into smaller pieces, which I don't want you to do. It is just there to make it easier when you have large numbers. Okay, the next group that we're going to talk about are the x's. Okay, we have, and the reason that we're going to call it an x is if I take my unit pieces, because that's kind of what I'm using as a ruler or to measure them, you'll see that it won't match up exactly with the number of units. In algebra, this is done on purpose, and we'll talk about it in a second. But it looks like it's a little bit more than 3, but it's not quite 4. We call that non-commensurate, and it basically means that we can't figure out exactly what it is. When we don't know what something is, we're going to give it a variable name or a letter name, and we're going to call it x. And so we know that it's 1 tall. We can see that by putting our unit piece up next to it. But we don't know exactly how wide it is. So we're going to just leave that as x. Okay, so its dimensions are 1 by x. 1 using this notation. We call it the 1x piece. And its perimeter, if I start in a corner and go around, I'm going to have 1 plus x plus 1 plus x, or 2 x's plus 2 1's. This piece is also an x piece, but it's a little bit different. It is an x squared. If we use the x pieces to measure it, that one's the same length as that. If we use it to measure it, we see that that side is going to be x, and that side is also a measurement of x exactly. And so when we put its dimensions down, x by x, we're going to give it a shorter name. We will call it an x squared, which is easy to remember because it's the x that's a square shape. Its perimeter is going to be x plus x plus x plus x, or 4x. The next one that we're going to work on are the y pages, or the y's. And like the x, it is 1 tall, but it's not exactly a certain number of x's. You can see there's going to be some extra if I use that. If I use units, I'm going to have extra. So it too is non-commensurate. It's not going to match up exactly. So it's a little, looks like it's a little more than 5 and a little less than 6. We're not going to give it any value, and when we use the variable, we don't give it a value. We just let it stand for x or y for right now. Its dimensions 1 by y. Its name is 1y, and if you add up its perimeter, it's 2y plus 2. Once again, you have a square that's a y, and its dimensions are y by y, and y by y is the same as y squared, or y to the second power. Now, when we find the area of a shape, we multiply its dimensions, its length times its width. So 1 times y is 1y, and y times y is y squared, and that was true of the other ones. On this, the perimeter is going to be y plus y plus y plus y, which is 4y. So remember, area is multiplying the dimensions, and perimeter is adding up the outside edges. And that gets us through our y's. Our last piece that we are going to do is kind of a special piece that is both an x and a y. Its color is green, and it is the xy piece. It is called the xy piece because it is x tall and it is y wide. So its dimensions are x by y. If you multiply those, you get xy, or 1xy, and the perimeter is 2 x's and 2 y's. So we say it's 2x plus 2y. Now, as you use these, you'll become more familiar. You need to know these names. You need to know a little bit about them and how they match up and what their dimensions are. It's very important. Hope this helps.